None of you media people talk about
All right,
this.
you can honestly sit here and tell the American public that only one time you got into a physical altercation, and
There's only one time that I physically try to force my will on Nicole Simpson. One time only.
All right, we have to take a break. We're with OJ Simpson. We're live in Los Angeles. Up close. We'll continue in a moment. Don't go away.
Now you're in this sunken place.
Dead in Hollywood.
So much to talk about. There's so many questions in this case. Your time between 9:36 and the evening of the murders and 10:53. It's time that the prosecution says is unaccounted for.
When does a man have to be held accountable for where he's at? When he's in his bedroom, when he's in his home.
Well, when he's a suspect for murder, that's what the prosecution says. We want to know where you were during that time.
Well, if they would have, when they asked me, I answered all the police questions about where I was that night. Basically, I was home. To me, once I get to 360 North Rockingham, when you come inside of those gates, I'm at home.
You were here during that time.
I was here during that time.
So the time that the prosecution claims generally that Nicole and Ron Goldman were murdered, you were here in this house.
Where I am the majority of the time, basically alone, all the time. So, I mean, somehow I heard there's no alibi. I said, I never have an alibi. When do you have to be held accountable for being in your bedroom, for being in your own home?
Investigators placed the time of death around 10:15 when neighbors heard a dog barking.
Sounded like a, very unhappy animal.
Pablo Finovez, who testifies during the trial that he heard the plaintive wail of a dog. That was the term he used, plaintive wail. The defense was able to dig up an unproduced screenplay he had written where he uses that same phrase, plaintive wail of a dog. So they're like, he just made this whole thing up. But many years later, Pablo gets a side gig ghostwriting celebrity autobiographies, and he's the one who ghostwrote OJ's hypothetical confession, "If I Did It." So another one of these weird kind of coincidences.
Just after midnight, Nicole's dog, a white Akita named Cato, was found wandering around the neighborhood all on its own with bloody paw prints. The Akita eventually led that neighbor back to the bodies of Nicole and Ron, who were just outside of her condo. This is now the entrance to the condo, but it's changed over the years. The actual entrance back in the day used to be right over here, to the right of this palm tree, right here. So their bodies would have been found just on the other side of this wall. Their bodies lay in a narrow passageway between Nicole's front steps and the front gate. The murders were incredibly violent, bloody, and swift. The medical examiner's report noted that the wounds were consistent with an attack by a strong, large man, a description that clearly fits OJ.
I don't want to stay on the line. You're going to beat the shit. Wait a minute, wait, just stay on the line.
Hey, look, I grabbed her. I had her in a headlock. I wrestled her. She was pushing me. I was pushing her. I literally physically removed her from the bedroom. Whatever bruises she got on her, whatever they are, I was responsible for. It's my fault. I am wrong. Court, do whatever you want to do to me. But what more do you want me to do? And why are we talking about it now?
Don't you think
I feel it'll be the same outcome this year.
OJ was forceful with Nicole from the very first date, sending her home to a roommate with ripped jeans.
I think she got home at 2 o'clock. Then all of a sudden I looked and her pants had been ripped, and I said, well, what happened? She said, well, he just was a little forceful and he ripped my pants. I said, you're kidding, why would you let him do that? I was kind of upset, and I said, I want to talk to him, I want to, and she goes, no, I think I like him.
For Nicole, it was love at first sight. Nicole, then 18 and fresh out of high school, landed a job as a waitress at the Daisy, a private Beverly Hills club. On her very first shift, Nicole caught the eye of OJ. 2 days after their first date, OJ wanted to buy Nicole an apartment and a car.
He said to her, I don't want you living with anybody. He seemed possessive, but not too overwhelming at that time. Later on, he seemed like he was more and more possessive and more jealous.
I was having problems in my marriage, and I was married to a very good person.
OJ started dating Nicole while he was still married to his first wife, Marguerite, who was pregnant with their daughter. Sadly, that little girl wouldn't make it to her second birthday. OJ's 23-month-old daughter drowned at the pool here at Rockingham. He got rid of that memory by getting rid of his first wife, Marguerite. OJ divorced Marguerite, and not long after, he married Nicole in a backyard wedding next to the very pool his daughter drowned in.
It's funny because I'm just so excited. It's really weird.
The marriage between Nicole and OJ lasted 7 tempestuous years. The pair fought constantly. OJ was controlling and abusive.
I don't understand why we're still talking about
But
this.
would it have helped? I mean, you say responsible. Would it have helped to say, yes, I hit her, I beat her?
Why would it help to say something that didn't happen?
Well, because
I was responsible for it.
It's been suggested that OJ's years of abuse towards Nicole stemmed, at least in part, from his relationship with his father. Jimmy Lee Simpson abandoned his family when OJ was only 4. OJ resented his father's absence. It took him years to come to terms with his feelings, if he ever did. On top of that, OJ's father was gay. Like Marvin Gaye's dad, OJ's dad liked to dress in women's clothing, embarrassing OJ whenever OJ brought friends over to his father's house. Growing up with a single mom, the kids in the neighborhood tormented OJ with the nickname Mama's Boy. OJ's desire to dominate and devour women to prove his own hyper-hetero masculinity was born out of an internalized homophobia.
My woman.
OJ was known to be very homophobic back in the day. At the murder trial, Nicole's diary was read, including an entry from 1988 when the family vacationed in Hawaii. A gay man had kissed his 3-year-old son Justin at a restaurant on New Year's Eve. After the Hawaii trip, Nicole asked one of OJ's friends if he thought OJ had freaked out about the gay man because his own father was gay. OJ's father died of AIDS in 1986. Nicole suffered unspeakable physical, emotional, and sexual abuse at the hands of OJ. She repeatedly called police for protection from OJ's brutal rampages, and over the years, OJ was only arrested once. He basically got off with a warning.
New Year's 1989.
On New Year's Eve 1989, Nicole called 911 for the 9th time. OJ had beaten her so badly that when the police officer pulled up to the house, he found her cowering in some bushes, barely clothed and bruised all over her body. When he asked her what was going on, she told him that he was going to kill her. The officer asked who, and she said, "My husband, OJ Simpson."
And I threw her out, and I really threw her out with no concern for her well-being. The one thing that hurts me as much as anything in this, besides being considered by some a murderer, this being a batterer.
OJ managed to escape that night by driving out of this gate. You see, the police and Nicole were over at the main gate, and the officer literally watched OJ speed off.
Car 54, where are you?
This is the Gretna greenhouse that the Simpsons bought after their first separation, and Nicole moved into before moving over to the Bundy condo. On October 25th, 1993, less than a year before the murders, Nicole made 2 frantic calls to 911. OJ had showed up unannounced and bashed in the back door. He was in a rage that she was seeing the manager, Mezzaluna, which makes you wonder if Mezzaluna never existed. Maybe Nicole and Ron would still be alive. And if you haven't heard the 911 tapes, they are truly chilling.
911 emergency. Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please.
Okay, what does he look like?
He's OJ Simpson. I think you know his record. He's in a white Bronco, but first of all, he broke the back door down to get in.
Okay, wait a minute. What's your name?
Nicole Simpson.
Oh, wait a minute. We're sending the police. What is he doing? Is he threatening you?
He's going nuts. You're going to hear him in a minute. He's about to go in again.
Okay, just stay on the line.
I don't want to stay on the line. He's going to beat the shit.
Wait a minute. What does he say? Code 2 high, incident 4221 already 825 children. Is he upset with something that you did?
Oh, a long time ago. It always comes back.
Incidentally, the only time you hear Nicole's perspective during any of this is that one phone call. This is also where, and this is one of these tabloid kind of stories, but apparently Nicole's on a date with her new boyfriend, Keith Zlumzowicz, also manager of the Mezzaluna restaurant, actually. And as the story goes, Nicole performs oral sex on Keith in the living room right there, with the knowledge that OJ was in the bushes spying on them. He'd always been unfaithful during their marriage, so she wanted to get back at him a little bit, make him angry.
This wasn't the first time OJ showed up unannounced at Nicole's place, and it sure wasn't going to be the last time. After Gretna Green sold, Nicole moved into the Bundy condo. Bundy offered a little bit more security for Nicole, or, you know, so she thought.
So here's the game plan, and it's pretty simple.
As shocking as it sounds, in 2007, OJ co-wrote the book If I Did It, where he basically confessed to killing Nicole and Ron.
I always feel that the truth will set you free.
In the book, he gives a hypothetical description of the murders, and if you can believe it, he gives himself an accomplice named Charlie. You see, according to OJ, Charlie's the one who committed the murders. OJ just went along to scare Nicole straight.
He has a couple hours till he has to take this flight to Chicago, but he thinks he has enough time, so he gets in his Bronco, comes down here, drives past the front of the house, doesn't see anything going on, and pulls around to the back, goes to the side gate, which he knew was broken because he came over here all the time. So whether he came over just to spy on Nicole, maybe slash her tires, scare her a little bit, we know that he did stuff like that.
The book was a self-portrait of a wife abuser who somehow worked himself up into thinking he was the victim and Nicole was the one on the fast track to hell.
As you sit here today, do you still think you're a battered husband or were a battered husband, battered boyfriend?
In reality, it was OJ who was losing control.
They call me Juice, the Juice.
You take Prozac?
No, I don't take any of those type of.
Nothing
I don't
to be
take
ashamed of.
I don't take any mood off. My vitamin E, so I can be ready when that time comes when some girl says, "Hey, Juice, take me."
OJ did an interview to publicize the book, but it was ultimately shelved and it wasn't released until 2017 when it aired in a Fox special on the murders.
I'm going to tell you a story you've never heard before because no one knows this story the way I know it. It takes place the night of June 12, 1994, and it concerns the murders of my ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her young friend, Ronald Goldman. Keep this in mind. This is hypothetical.
In the interview, he goes into great detail about the night of the murders.
I can go on and on.
He reveals himself to be the killer with every answer.
What might have happened on the night of June 12th, 1994. And let's just walk through the night.
Well, first of all, this is very difficult for me to do this. In the book, the hypothetical is...
Charlie, pulls that up.
Charlie. I know it sounds silly, it sounds a little stupid, but it works for me. I don't know why you had been by Nicole's house, but it told me you wouldn't believe what's going on over there. And I remember thinking, well, whatever's going on over there has got to stop. You know, I'm kind of broad stroking this. We go over, get in the Bronco and go over.
You park
in the hypothetical, go in the alley.
He just can't get Nicole off of his mind. She was apparently wearing a short skirt at the recital, so he's thinking, oh, I bet she has a guy over there, she has a date. I warned her about doing stuff like that when the kids are home. I'm gonna go see what she's up to.
OJ parked his Bronco here, in the alley behind Nicole's condo. OJ retrieved his knife from the Bronco that he kept to ward off the crazies, and he put on a wool cap and his famously ill-fitting gloves.
It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
He then let himself in through this gate and made his way to the front of Nicole's condo.
I go to the front and I'm looking to see what's going on, and I can see that it appears like Nicole had candles all the time. She really did, to keep her overhead down, I think. And music was on.
Remember, OJ did the exact same thing at Gretna Green when he was spying on Nicole, hooking up with the manager of Mezzaluna. So you know he was seeing red when he sees this good-looking waiter from Mezzaluna show up on Nicole's doorstep.
While I was there, a guy shows up. In the mood I was in, I started having words with him.
He says to you, I just came by to return a pair of glasses. Judy left them at the restaurant.
Yeah, words to that effect, yes.
OJ then accused Ron of selling drugs to Nicole. During the trial of the century, the defense team put forth an alternate theory claiming that Colombian drug dealers murdered Nicole and Ron, and that Mezzaluna was a nexus for drug trafficking in Brentwood. Evidence was presented at the criminal trial that Nicole's wound on her neck was a Colombian necktie, a form of mutilation in which the victim's tongue is pulled through a deep cut beneath the jaw and left dangling on the neck, a calling card often employed by Colombian drug dealers. Ron's friend, record label executive Brett Cantor, was murdered in a similar fashion a year earlier. Brett was part owner of the Dragonfly nightclub here on Santa Monica Boulevard, where Ron was a waiter and Nicole frequently visited.
Is it weird finding that out, that it was other murders?
It is strange that there were a number of other unsolved murders that all involved Mezzaluna, which adds credence to the theory that Mezzaluna was a drug front. After leaving the club on July 30th, 1993, Britt was found murdered in his apartment here on North Vista Street in Hollywood. Brett was stabbed 23 times. Like Nicole, his throat had been cut almost to the point of decapitation, and his body would be found near his open front door. Nothing in his apartment had been touched, and his case remains unsolved to this day. On September 8th, 1995, a year after the double murders, aspiring actor Michael Nigg was shot and killed in this parking lot. Michael worked at Mezzaluna alongside Ron, and even dated Ron's sister, Kim Goldman, in 1992. Less than a month before OJ was found not guilty, Michael was murdered. And to date, his killers have never been caught, and the crime remains unsolved.
Okay, based on your experience, sir, and training, in your opinion, was the murder of Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown a drug-related murder?
Both defense and prosecution in the criminal case evaluated these tenuously linked incidents and rejected them, either because the witnesses were not credible or the connections were mere coincidences. So whether or not OJ believed that Ron was a drug dealer is pure speculation. I think it can be surmised that OJ was not thrilled when Ron showed up at Nicole's that night.
And here comes Ron with the glasses.
Got a little loud, and by that time, Nicole had come out, and we started having words about who is this guy, why is he here, what's going on.
And she says, this is my house, get the F out of here.
Which I didn't like.
By this point, Nicole ordered OJ to leave, but he refused.
Things got heated. I just remember Nicole fell and hurt herself.
Let's be real, he struck her, sending her to the ground like he did on multiple occasions.
Charlie took the knife?
Yeah. And this guy kind of got into a karate thing. And I said, well, you think you can kick my ass? And I remember I grabbed the knife. I do remember that portion, taking the knife from Charlie. And to be honest, after that, I don't remember. Except I'm standing there and there's all kind of stuff around and
what kind of stuff?
Blood and stuff around.
Jesus, Juice.
I hate to say this, but this is hypothetical. I'm sorry. Right. I know we got to back up again.
Right. I want to back up.
This is hard. This is
hard.
Yeah,
I know. I want to back up
to try to make people think that I'm.
I know. You wrote in the book, I had never seen so much blood in my life.
During the interview, he totally glosses over the actual murders, but he does admit to holding the knife before blacking out.
You ever blacked out before?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
No. Of course, if something like this would take place in anybody's life, if it were to happen, I would imagine it's something that you would probably automatically have trouble wrapping your mind around it. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
OJ conveniently leaves out the most disturbing aspects of the killings.
But we're going to make it as painless as possible.
With the kids fast asleep upstairs, Nicole and Ron lay dead just behind this wall. And the murders were brutal. Nicole was stabbed 12 times and she was almost decapitated. Ron was stabbed 25 times. Nicole was laying face down and barefoot at the bottom of the stairs. The front door was open, but there was no signs that anyone entered the condo. Nicole and OJ's kids, Sydney and Justin, slept upstairs. If OJ did do it, he did it knowing that his children might find their mom's dead body. The walkway leading to the stairs was covered in blood, but the soles of Nicole's feet were clean, which led investigators to conclude that she was the first to be killed. Nicole had been stabbed multiple times in the head and the neck. There were only a few defensive wounds on her hands, implying a short struggle.
At this point, Mr. Goldman comes up to the gate, punches it, and rings the doorbell. Nicole Simpson leaves her condo, and she actually leaves the front door ajar to come down and open the gate. Literally, the assailant has to come from the patio area, or the physical arrangements of the subjects make no sense. Soon thereafter, we believe the assailant hits Nicole Simpson on the left side of her face with the butt of his knife, the pommel. And that knocks her right side of her head into the wall. We believe that knocks her out. which enables the assailant now to come down and deal with the number one threat, which is the young, able, and in pretty good shape Mr. Goldman.
Okay, obviously this is your older brother. We don't get to spend very much time together, so I'm very glad that I was able to be here and spend this time with you, because God knows where I'll be in a year.
Ron's body lay near Nicole's, close to a tree and the fence. He'd been stabbed multiple times in the body and neck, but like Nicole, there were relatively few defensive wounds on his hands, signifying another short struggle.
It's obvious from the medical evidence that the assailant has a hand over Mr. Goldman's mouth, is having a talk with Mr. Goldman, and is emphasizing his points with the knife. We postulate he falls away into the fence. We see abrasion marks down the back of his scalp, which we believe is a result of falling down the fence. And then he falls over, and that is literally the position he is found by the police the next morning. With Mr. Goldman dealt with, the assailant is now free to turn his attention to Nicole.
The final wound inflicted upon Nicole ran deep into her neck. She also had a footprint on her back that led investigators to surmise that after killing Ron, the assailant returned to Nicole's body, stood on her back, pulled her head back by the hair, and slit her throat.
It's clear again that the assailant is talking to Nicole Simpson. There are 3 other small cuts on her throat, parallel to where the fatal blow is going to be administered. It's clearly, again, torture. The final cut across her throat. The strength in that cut is enormous. She is going to receive a single slice to the front of the throat that is going to be so deep, it is going to nick her spinal cord.
Nicole's larynx could be seen through the wound in her neck.
Get all that energy exploding out of me.
Next to Ron's body was the wool cap and a left-handed, extra-large isotoner glove. The right-hand glove was found at Rockingham.
I had to realize the juice, you gotta be a lot smarter about what you eat.
OJ made his escape back down this alley, leaving behind a trail of bloody size 12 shoe prints. Investigators measured the distance between the prints and concluded that he must have walked away. He didn't run away from the crime scene. He casually walked back to the Bronco.
Especially when a guy have a bad knee like I have,
Yeah,
huh?
you got it.
I used to walk on the wild side. Now, I just take a brisk walk.
He also left blood splatter on this gate and bloody change on the ground. It's assumed that's the change he was handed at the McDonald's drive-thru. OJ sped away in the cover of night. It's like a 7-minute drive from Nicole's back to Rockingham. While fleeing the crime scene, OJ almost crashed into another car.
As OJ's on his way back home, there's a woman heading in the opposite direction down San Vicente named Jill Shively, who's on her way to the grocery store down the street to get soup from the salad bar because she had a cold. She knew that the market closed at 11. It was right before 11, so she could kind of remember what time it was, but she's minding her own business, you know, just driving down the street, and OJ runs through the intersection, and they almost get in a head-on collision. And they stop and they make eye contact. And OJ was known for being very approachable. He'd always pose for pictures and sign autographs and stuff. So I think when he gets recognized, his celebrity instincts kick in, and he's like, oh, I gotta say something to this lady. So he leans out the window and he's like, hey, get out of the way. And Jill's like, huh, that's weird. She's kind of shaken up. She gets home. According to her, she calls the police. Again, no police report or anything, but she calls the police and she's like, hey, I almost just got in a car accident with OJ Simpson. I think he was drunk driving or something. Just thought you guys should know about it. So she talks to the lawyers. She's all set to testify. But before the trial even starts, she sells her story to the tabloid TV show Hard Copy for $5,000.
Tonight on Hard Copy. Back in 1994, Shively testified before the grand jury, but she was never called as a witness in the murder trial because she sold her story to a TV show for $5,000.
He was really like a madman gone mad, insane.
Marsha Clark, the prosecuting attorney, is furious. She's like, okay, we can't put this lady on the stand. They're going to think she has made this whole thing up to make a couple bucks and get on TV.
And she said, I remember this, you blew my case. It was that, over and over. And I never forgot it. I felt horrible.
OJ was scheduled to board a red-eye flight from LAX to Chicago to play golf the next day. OJ's limo driver arrived early, around 10:25, and he drove around the neighborhood to make sure he could navigate the area with the stretched limo. He didn't notice OJ's Bronco parked in front of the house, suggesting it wasn't there when OJ said he was at home sleeping. The limo driver buzzed the intercom at 10:40 and got no response.
When OJ pulls up a little while later, he sees the limo waiting for him, so he's got to ditch the Bronco. So he parks in front of where the numbers are painted, which means he arrived after the limo driver did. He's parked on the outside of the gate. All the other cars are on the inside of the gate, so that's kind of suspicious. He's parked at an angle, so it looks like he's parked in a hurry. And of course, there's blood on the car and in the car, so he's got to ditch the Bronco. So he parks in front of the house here, runs over to this side of the property. You can actually kind of see where the bushes aren't as grown in. The fence is a little taller. That's because that part was added when they built the new house. Originally, there was a pathway between the two houses. He runs along the path to his property, jumps over the wall to his place. In the confusion, he drops the other leather glove he's carrying, bangs into Cato's air conditioner, shakes the whole guest house. Cato thought there was an earthquake or something.
Here we have this air conditioning unit, which we've heard a lot about. This was a unit that Cato Kalin heard 3 loud thumps from. 3 loud bumps, sort of like that. I don't know what that could have been. Maybe it was a signal. I have no idea, but he never. Now let's take a good look at this air conditioning unit. Right down here, about 4 or 5 feet from this unit is where they found, or where they claim to have found the glove.
OJ goes around to the back door and realizes that the alarm is on, so he has to come around to the front, and this is when the limo driver sees a shadowy figure across the yard.
Who was the shadowy figure that came across the driveway?
Soon after this, Cato came out of the guest house to investigate the loud thuds, and he sees the limo parked outside the gate and buzzes it in.
He thought we had an earthquake. He talked about a picture moving on his wall, that he heard some thumps, and that he wanted a flashlight so he can to go check it out.
As I walk down my driveway, as you can see, it's easy to see me. Alan Park testified on the stand that he had a view from the end of my garage right up here, actually to the front of my house. Now let's go inside.
A few minutes later, an out-of-breath OJ came out of the house, claiming that
he overslept, he just got out of the shower, and he'd be down in a minute.
Both Cato and the limo driver would testify that OJ seemed agitated.
On the way to the airport, did the defendant say anything to you?
Yeah, a few times he repeated how hot he was. 2 or 3 times he said, man, it's hot.
It was not a warm night by any means. The limo driver also testified that Simpson loaded 4 bags into the limo and wouldn't let him touch any of them.
It was another, seemed to be small duffel bag. Cato offered to go get the bag. He said, no, that's okay, I'll get it.
What was in the black bag?
Golf balls, usable golf balls, and a windbreaker.
At LAX, OJ only checked in 3 bags, which led investigators to believe that 4th bag was disposed of in a trash can outside of the American Airlines terminal. It's assumed that the murder weapon was in that 4th bag.
OJ is able to make his 11:45 flight because this is before they have airport security and the TSA, and so the flight leaves on time, and not long after the flight departs, the bodies are discovered down on Bundy.
I used to run through airports. Now I fly through them.
5 days later, on November 17th, OJ was charged with the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. But when police went to arrest him, he had disappeared.
When did the blood appear in the Bronco? I mean, what?
The jury in the above entitled action find the defendant, Ronald James Simpson, not guilty of
The Los Angeles Police Department sought and obtained a warrant for the arrest of OJ Simpson for the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Lyle Goldman.
Are you capable of killing somebody?
Car is not exceeding the speed limit.
I would say no.
I don't know, what was that?
OJ hid out at his friend Robert Kardashian's house here in Encino.
I killed him. It'll be the same outcome this year.
I got a little getting even to do. God bless, take care.
This letter was written by OJ today.
Asshole! I
never existed.
They call me Juice, the Juice.
Are we all fools? Do they take us all for morons?
Now we have so much ground to cover here, it would be simply impossible to cover it all in this period of time.
It's hard to say what in the world is on his mind at this point.
That's right.
Very good, you guys.
I made it.